Question number 1. Which among the following defines the bank rate? Bank rate refers to the official interest rate at which RBI will provide loans to the banking system, which includes commercial, cooperative banks, development banks, etc. Question number 2. Which among the following statements are correct regarding tax buoyancy? A tax is said to be a buoyant if the tax revenues increase more than proportionately in response to a raise in GDP. Developed countries tends to be more tax buoyant as compared to developing country because developing country like India has relatively low tax to GDP ratio. It is because of various tax exemptions that are given by the government of developing country for the social welfare and progress of the society. Question number 3. Which of the following best defines a floating rate bond? Floating rate bonds have variable interest rate and protect investors against a rise in interest rates, which have an inverse relationship with bond prices. They also carry lower yield than fixed notes of the same maturity. Question number 4. Which among the following tools can be used for fiscal consolidation? Fiscal consolidation refers to the policies undertaken by governments, national and subnational levels, to reduce their deficits and accumulation of debt stock. Improved tax revenue realization and better aligned expenditure are the concept of fiscal consolidation. As a fiscal deficit reaches at a manageable level, so all the above measures can be used for fiscal consolidation in the economy. Are there revenue reforms, disinvestment and privatization, rationalizing subsidies? Question number 5. Which among the following best defines the Laffer curve? The Laffer curve is a theory developed by supply side economist Arthur Laffer to show the relationship between the amount of tax revenue collected by governments. If tax are too high along the Laffer curve, then they will discourage the taxed activities such as work and investment enough to actually reduce total tax revenue. Question number 6. Which among the following statement regarding angel investors is correct? Angel investors are individuals who seek to at the early stages of startups. These types of investments are risky and usually do not represent more than 10% of the angel investors portfolio. They are regulated by Securities and Exchange Board of India. They invest their own money unlike a venture capitalist who invest public money. Question number 7. Consider the following statement about impact of tax. Tax incidence is the manner in which the tax burden is divided between buyers and sellers. The tax incidence depends on the relative price elasticity of supply and demand. When supply is more elastic than demand, buyers bear most of the tax burden. When demand is more elastic than supply, producers bear most of the cost of the tax. Question number 8. Which of the following will be the outcome if an economy is under the inflationary pressure? Creditors and debtors. During inflation, creditors lose because they receive in effect less in goods and services than if they had received the repayments during the period of low prices. Debtors, on other hand, also other hand as a group gain during inflation since they repay their debts in currency that has lost its value. The aggregate volume of internal trade tends to increase during inflation due to higher incomes, greater production, and larger spending. But the export trade is likely to suffer on account of a rise in the price of the domestic goods. The same currency unit will now buy less goods and services, but the bondholders lose as they get a fixed interest. The real value of which has already fallen. Question number 9. Which one among the following pairs are matched correctly? When the marginal product increases, the total product is also increasing at an increasing rate. This gives the total product curve a convex in the beginning as variable factor inputs increases. This continues to the point where the MP curve reaches its maximum. Question number 10. The income elasticity of demand for inferior goods is less than 0. Income elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of for a particular goods to change in consumer income. The higher the income elasticity of demand is absolute terms for a particular good, the bigger consumers' response in their purchasing habits. If their real income changes, a negative income elasticity of demand is associated with inferior goods. An increase in income will lead to a fall in demand and may lead to a change to more luxurious substitutes. A positive income elasticity of demand is associated with normal goods. An increase in income will lead to a rise in demand. Question number 11. The concept of hegemony is used to understand the capacity to manufacture consent. Here, hegemony is the political, economical, or military predominance or control of one state over other. In ancient Greece, hegemony denoted the politico-military dominance of city state over other city states. It thus simply means the leadership or dominance of one group over the other. Question number 12. Which of the following statements are correct? When marginal revenue is positive, total revenue increases with increase in output. When marginal revenue is zero, total revenue is maximum. When marginal value becomes negative, total revenue fall with increase in output. All are correct. Question number 13. Which of the following statements are correct? Gross domestic product GDP is the monetary value of all finished goods and services made within the country during a specific period. If a country's per capita GDP is growing with a stable population level, it can potentially be the result of technological progression that are producing more with the same population level. Hence, the increase per capita GDP. Hence, with increased per capita GDP, the GDP of the country must also be growing. Negative inflation happens when prices generally fall in an economy. However, there is no relation of increasing or decreasing of GDP in the case of deflation, as falling price of an economy cannot exactly tell about changes in monetary value of all finished goods and services made within a country during a specific period. Question number 14. Which one among the following is an appropriate description of deflation? Deflation is a fall in the overall level of price in an economy and an increase in the of the currency. It can be driven by an increase in productivity and the abundance of goods and services, by a decrease in total or aggregate demand, or by a decrease in supply of money and credit. Question number 15. Consider the following statement with regard to statutory liquidity ratio. SLR refers to the percentage of money which the bank have to set aside and invest in gold or RBI approved securities. It is maintained by bank with themselves and restrict the bank's leverage in pumping more money into the economy. Question number 16. Consider the following with respect to gross value added. Gross value added is a measure of total output and income in the economy. It provides the rupee value for the number of goods and services produced in an economy after deducting the cost of input and raw material that have gone into the production of those goods and services. Question number 17. Consider the following with respect to gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation refers to net addition of capital stock such as equipment, building, and other intermediate goods. A nation uses capital stock in combination with labor to provide services and produce goods. To grow at a faster rate, a nation needs high level of capital formation so that it can grow its aggregate income as well as per capita income. This is because higher level of capital shock enable an economy to produce more goods and services. Question number 18. Consider the following with respect to incremental capital output ratio. Incremental capital output ratio is used to assess a country's level of production efficiency. ICOR equals annual investment or by annual increase in GDP. Higher level of ICOR means that capital is not being used efficiently to increase production. Generally, for most countries, ICOR incremental capital output ratio is around 3. Question number 19. Consider the following with respect to value added method GDP. Value added method or the product method. The value added or production method is used by economists to calculate GDP at market prices, which is the total value of output produced at different stages of production. It needs to be mentioned that caution should be taken to take final goods and not intermediate goods, as it with result in double counting. Some of the goods and services included in production are goods and services actually sold in the market, goods and services not sold but supplied free of cost. Some of the goods and services not included in production are second hand item and purchase and sale of the same, sale and purchase of second cars, for example, are not a part of GDP calculation as no new production takes place in the economy. Production due to unwarranted illegal activities, non-economic goods or natural goods such as air and water. Transfer payments such as scholarship, pension, etc. are excluded as there is income received but no good or services is produced in turn. Imputed rental for owner occupied house is also excluded. Question number 20. Consider the following with respect to base effect. The base effect refers to the tendency of a small change from a low initial amount to the current amount, which is translated into large percentage and appears as large. To understand this, we take a simple example. We assume that the government sums rupees 100 in 2001 and in the following year the consumption shows following trends. In this example, we note that though as compared to year 2001 the growth is still negative, but it appears that the growth in 2006 has jumped to 25%. This is called base effect. The base effect is generally used in terms of inflation but is used almost in all important economic indicators. Thus, the base effect refers to the impact of the rise in price level, that is last year's inflation, in the previous year over the corresponding rise in price level in the current year, that is current inflation. If the price index has raised at the high rate in corresponding period of the previous year leading to high inflation rate, some of the potential raise is already factored in. Therefore, a similar absolute increase in the price index in the current year will lead to a relatively lower inflation rate. On the other hand, if the inflation rate was too low in the corresponding period of the previous year, even a relatively smaller rise in the price index will arithmetically give a higher rate of current inflation. Question number 21. Consider the following with respect to national income. The total value of finished goods and services sorry, the total value of finished final goods and service produced by the normal resident during the accounting year after adjusting depreciation. It is net national product at factor cost. It does not include taxes, depreciation, non-factor inputs, that are raw materials. Question number 22. Consider the following with respect to green GDP. Green GDP is the term used generally in expressing GDP after adjusting for environmental damage. When information of economy use of the natural environment is integrated into the system of national accounts, it becomes green national account or environmental accounting. The process of environmental accounting involves three steps, namely physical accounting, monetary valuation, and integration with national income or wealth accounts. Physical accounting determines the state of the resource types and extent, qualitative and quantitative, in spatial and temporal terms. Monetary valuation is done to determine in its tangible and intangible components. Thereafter, the net change in natural resource in monetary term is integrated into gross domestic product in order to reach the value of green GDP. Question number 23. Consider the following with respect to personal income. Personal income is the income of the residents, individuals of a country. To calculate personal income, transfer payments to individuals are added to national income, while social security contributions, corporate tax, and undistributed profits are subtracted. Per, subtracted. Personal is equal to national income plus income transfer system minus social security contribution plus undistributed profits of corporate. Question number 24. Consider the following with respect to alternative investment fund. Alternative investment fund means any fund established in India with which is a privately pooled investment vehicle which collects fund from sophisticated investors, whether Indian or foreign, for investing it in accordance with a defined investment policy for the benefit of its investor. Question number 25. Consider the following statement regarding core inflation. Core inflation is the change in the cost of goods and services but does not include those from the food and energy sector. Food and energy price are exempt from this calculation because their price can be too volatile or fluctuate widely. Core inflation is important because it used to determine the impact of rising price on consumer income. Question number 26. Consider the following with respect to credit rating agencies. Securities and Exchange Board of India (SEBI) is released a new framework for financial disclosure by credit rating agencies. Credit rating agencies are companies that evaluate the financial condition of issuer of debt instruments. CRAs assign a rating that reflects its assessment of the issuer ability to make the debt payment. Question number 27. Consider the following with respect to money market mutual fund. Money market mutual fund are short-run liquid investment which invest in high quality money market instruments such as treasury bills, repurchase agreements, commercial papers, and certificate of deposit. Money market fund is an open-end mutual fund. It invests in short-term debt securities like treasury bill and commercial papers. Debt securities fund invest in fixed income securities like bonds and treasury bills. Question number 28. Consider the following with respect to revaluation. Revaluation refers to an upward adjustment of the country's official exchange rate, the relative to either price of gold or any other foreign currency. Revaluation increases the value of the domestic currency with respect to the foreign currency. Revaluation is a feature of the fixed exchange rate regime. Whether the exchange rate is determined by the central bank or the government. Revaluation is opposite to devaluation, which is a downward adjustment. Question number 29. Consider the following with respect to bear market. It is considered riskier to invest in a bear market as many equities lose value. Thus, most investors withdraw their money from the markets. During bear market, the economy slows down and unemployment rises as companies being lay off workers. Question number 30. Consider the following with respect to benefits of rating agencies. Benefit of rating agencies. Investors rely on the rating given by the credit rating agency to make investment decision. Many countries sell their securities in the international market and a good credit rating can help them access high value investors. A favorable rating may also attract other forms of investment like foreign direct investment to a country. A low credit rating or relegation of a country from a high rating to a low rating can discourage investors from purchasing the bonds or making direct investment in the country. For example, the downgrading of Greece, Portugal and Ireland by S&P in 2010 worsened the European sovereign debt crisis. The rating provided by rating agency also serve as a benchmark for financial market regulation. Question number 31. Consider the following with respect to bond yield. Bond yield is the return an investor realizes on a bond. Bond yield can be defined in different ways. Setting the bond yield equal to its coupon rate is the simplest definition. The current yield is a function of the bond prices and its coupon on or interest payments, which will be more accurate than the coupon yield if the price of the bond is different than its face value. More complex calculation of the bond's yield will account for the time value of money and compounding interest payments. These calculations include yield to maturity, bond equivalent yield, and effective annual yield. Discovery. Question number 32. Consider the following with respect to private equity and venture capital. Private equity is capital invested in a company or other entity that is not publicly listed or traded. Venture capital is funding given to startups or other young business that show potential for long-term growth. Private equity and venture capital buy different types of companies, invest different amount of money and claim different amount of equity in the companies in which they invest. Question number 33. Consider the following with respect to initial public offering. The initial public offering refers to process of offering share of a private corporation to the public in a new stock issuance. Such public share issuance allow the company to raise capital from public investors. An initial public offering refers to the process of offering share of the private corporation to the public in a new stock issuance. Question number 34. Consider the following with respect to depression. The level of productivity in an economy falls significantly during a depression. Both the GDP and GNP show a negative growth along with a greater business failure and unemployment. Question number 35. Consider the following with respect to primary market. Primary market issue securities on an exchange for companies, governments and other groups to obtain financing through debt-based and equity-based securities. Primary markets are facilitated by an underwriting group consisting of investment bank that set a beginning price range for a given security and oversees its sale to investors. Question number 36. Consider the following with respect to significance and benefits of a regulatory sandbox. Significance. The regulatory sandbox will help fintech companies launch innovative products at a lower cost and less time. The sandbox will enable fintech companies to conduct live and virtual testing of, of their new product and services. These companies will also be able to test the viability of the product without a wider and expensive rollout. It will help companies to experiment with fintech solution where the consequence of failure will be contained and reasons for failure analyzed. Question number 37. Consider the following with respect to leverage ratio. Leverage ratio is the ratio of total core capital to the total consolidated asset, that is loans, of the bank. It is primarily a measure to total indebtedness of a bank. Question number 38. Consider the following with respect to small finance banks. Lend 75% to their total adjusted net bank credit to priority sector. Maximum loan size would be 10% of capital fund to single borrower, 15% of to a group. Minimum 50% of loan should be up to 25 lakhs. Question number 39. Consider the following with respect to merchant discount rate. Merchant discount rate, alternately referred to as the transaction discount rate TDR, is the sum total of all the charges and taxes that a digital payment entails. Simply put, in a charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting payment from their customers in credit and debit cards every time a card gets swiped in their stores. Similarly, merchant discount rate also includes the processing charges, that is that a payment aggregator has to pay to online or mobile wallets or in need to banks for their service. Question number 40. Consider the following with respect to depreciation and devaluation. Depreciation and devaluation both affect the value of a country's currency. Both of them lead to a fall in the value of a country's currency in terms of other currency. However, the manner in which this happens is very different. The causes and long term impact on the country's economy are different in both these cases. Question number 41. Consider the following with respect to purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity is a popular metric used by macroeconomist analysts to compare different countries' currency through the basket of goods approach. Purchasing power parity allows the economists to compare economic productivity and standard of living between countries. Some countries adjust their gross domestic product figures to reflect PPP. Question number 42. Consider the following with respect to real effective exchange rate. The real effective exchange rate is the weight, weighted average of a country's currency in relation to an index of basket of other major currencies. The weight are determined by companies by comparing the relative trade balance of a country's currency against each country within the index. This exchange rate is used to determine an individual country's currency value relative to the other major currencies in the index. Question number 43. Consider the following with respect to adjusted peg system. Adjusted peg system. Under this, the central bank tries to hold the exchange rate of domestic currency until the foreign exchange reserves of that country gets exhausted. After this, the central bank goes for the devaluation of the domestic currency to move to other equilibrium of the exchange rate. Question number 44. The four different phases of trade cycle are referred to as boom, recession, depression, and recovery. Question number 45. Consider the following statement with respect to quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is a form of monetary policy used by central banks as a method of quickly increasing the domestic money supply and spurring economic activities. Quantitative ease usually involves a country's central bank purchasing longer term government bonds as well as other types of assets such as mortgage backed securities. Question number 46. Consider the following statement. Aggregate demand in an economy is the sum of consumption, investment, government procurement, and net trade balance, that is, export minus import. Aggregate consumption in an economy is the total output by all firms in the country. When aggregate demand and the supply are initially matched, we get stable economy. Question number 47. Which of the following comes under monetary measure? They are increase in bank rate, sale of government security in the open market, higher cash reserve ratio and statutory liquidity ratio, consumer credit control and higher margin requirements, higher repo rate and reverse repo rate. Question number 48. Consider the following with respect to cheap money policy. Cheap money policy or the policy of credit expansion also leads to increase in the money supply, which raises the demand of goods and services in the economy. Question number 49. Consider the following with respect to stagflation. The term was coined by Lane MacLeod, a Conservative Party MP in the United Kingdom in November 1965. Stagflation is said to happen when an economy faces stagnant growth as well as persistently high inflation. With stalled economic growth, unemployment tend to rise and existing incomes do not rise fast enough to yet. People have to contend with rising inflation. So people find themselves pressurized from both sides of their purchasing power is reduced. Question number 50. Which of the following is correct regarding aggregate demand? Answer: aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Question number 51. Consider the following with respect to marginal standing facility. Bank borrows from the central bank by pledging government securities at a rate higher than the repo rate under liquidity adjustment facility or LAF in short. The marginal standing facility rate is pegged 100 base points or a percentage point above the repo rate. Under MSF, banks can borrow funds up to 1% of their net demand and time liabilities. Question number 52. Consider the following with respect to moral suasion. Moral suasion means persuasion and request to arrest in inflationary situation. Central banks persuade and request the commercial bank to refrain from giving loans for speculative and non-essential purposes. On the other hand, to counter deflation, central bank persuade the commercial bank to exceed credit for different purpose. Question number 53. Consider the following with respect to investment banking. Investment banking is a special segment of banking operation that help individual or organization raise capital and provide financial consultancy service to them. They act as intermediaries between securities issuer and investor and help new firms to go public. Question number 54. Consider the following regarding currency deposit ratio. The currency deposit ratio shows the amount of currency that people hold as a proportion of aggregate deposit. An increase in cash deposit ratio leads to an increase in money multiplier. Question number 55. Consider the following statement with respect to monetary policy. Monetary policy is the macroeconomic policy laid down by the central bank. It involves management of money supply and interest rate and is the demand side economic policy usually by the government of a country to achieve macroeconomic objectives like inflation, consumption, growth and liquidity. Question number 56. Consider the following statement with respect to call money market. Call money, call money rate is the rate at which short-term funds are borrowed and lent in the money market. The duration of the call money loan is 1 day. Question number 57. Which one of the following statements correctly describe the meaning of legal tender money? Legal tender is any official medium of payment recognized by law that can be used to extinguish a public or private debt or meet a financial obligation. The national currency is legal tender in practically every country. A creditor is obligated to accept legal tender toward repayment of a debt. Question number 58. Consider the following with respect to non-performing asset. A loan whose interest or an installment of principal has remained overdue for a period of 90 days is considered as non-performing asset. Banks are required to classify non-performing asset further into three categories based on the period for which the asset has remained non-performing. Question number 59. Consider the following with respect to insolvency professional. Insolvency professionals handle the commercial aspect of insolvency resolution process. Insolvency professional agencies develop a professional standards code of ethics and be first level regulator for insolvency professional members, leading to development of a competitive industry for such professionals. Information utilities collect, authenticate, and disseminate financial information to be used in insolvency, liquidation, and bankruptcy proceedings, enabling, provision to deal with cross-border insolvency. Question number 60. Consider the following with respect to rational or bad bank. Reassuring trust. Moreover, the creation of a bad bank allows the segregation of a bank's good asset from its bad asset. These allow investors to access its financial health with greater clarity and for banks to grow financially. Aside from these, a government led initiative may perhaps make it more palatable or even an attractive opportunity for investors to invest their money, both domestic and foreign. Question number 61. Consider the following with respect to helicopter money. It is an hypothetical concept put forward by economist Milton Friedman. This involves the central bank of the country printing currency notes and distributing to the people free of cost. The idea here is to promote demand in the economy during recession. Question number 62. Consider the following with respect to benefit of public credit registry. Credit assessment and credit pricing will help banks distinguish between a bad and a good borrower and accordingly offer attractive interest rates to good borrowers and higher interest rates to bad borrowers. It can also enable RBI in understanding whether the monetary transmission is working fully or not. It can help banks and regulators in early intervention and effective restructuring of stressed bank credits. Current existing credit registers in India is highly fragmented. Question number 63. Consider the following with respect to regressive tax. A regressive tax is a type of tax that is assessed regardless of income, in which low and high income earners pay the same dollar amount. This kind of tax is a bigger burden on low income earners than high income earners, for whom the same dollar amount equates to a much larger percentage of total income earned. A regressive system differs from a progressive system in which higher earners pay a higher percentage of income tax than lower earners. In the US and certain other developed countries, a progressive tax is applied to income, but other taxes are levied uniformly, such as sale tax and user user fees. Question number 64. Consider the following with respect to corporate tax. Reduction in rates for smaller companies may be beneficial to these entities, but it is unlikely to have the impact that similar cuts for larger companies is likely to have in boosting private investment. Corporate taxes account for around one third of the total tax collection. The centers in expecting a growth the center is expecting a growth of around 13% in corporate tax collection in financial year 20 to ensure to shore up its revenue collection, but instead of trying to increase revenue by holding higher rates, it could try to reduce rates, which can result in higher compliance. There is also a widespread tax evasion prevailing now, with larger companies paying lower taxes than smaller ones. Reduction in tax rates could help improve compliance of these companies, and along with greater scrutiny by tax authorities, tax collection could be improved. Question number 65. Consider the following with respect to surcharge. Surcharge is an additional charge or tax laid on an existing tax. Unlike a cess, it is meant to raise revenue for a temporary need. Surcharge is usually permanent in nature. Question number 66. Consider the following with respect to tax credit. A tax credit is another form of tax relief, and it is one that provides greater saving than a tax deduction. A tax credit is directly subtracted from the individual total amount of tax owed after all deductions are made. For example, says a taxpayer has finished itemizing deduction and bill amounts to $3,000. If a person is also eligible for $1,000 tax credit, the final tax bill will be $1,900. This type of tax relief is often described as a tax incentive because it reimburses taxpayers for expenditure that the government deems worthwhile. For example, the American Opportunity Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit program allow tax credits to be taken by people who enroll in post-secondary education program. Question number 67. National product at factor cost is equal to national product at market price minus indirect taxes plus subsidies. When national product is calculated at market price, it includes both indirect tax and subsidies. Indirect tax are expenses which increase the value and hence are subtracted to reach the national product at factor cost, whereas subsidies reduce the value of the product, hence are added to calculate the true value. As such, national product at factor cost is equal to national product at market price minus indirect taxes plus subsidies. Question number 68. Capital deepening referred to. Capital deepening is a situation where a capital per worker is increasing in the economy. This is also referred to as increase in the capital intensity. Capital deepening is often measured by the rate of change in capital stock per labor hour. Question number 69. Consider the following with respect to convertible debentures. A convertible debenture is a type of long-term debt issued by a company that can be converted into shares of equity stock after a specified period. Convertible debentures are usually unsecured bonds or loans, often with no underlying collateral backing up the debt. These long-term debt securities pay interest return to the bondholders like any other bond. The unique feature of convertible debt de- debentures is that they are exchangeable for stock at specified times. This feature gives the bondholder some security that may offset some of the risk involved in with investing in unsecured debt. Question number 70. Consider the following with respect to coupon rate. When a market tick up ticks up in is more value favorable, the coupon holder will yield less than the prevailing market conditions as the bond will not pay more as its value was determined at issuance. The yield to maturity is when a bond is purchased on the secondary market and is the difference in the bond's interest payments, which may be higher or lower than the bond's coupon rate when it was issued. Question number 71. What is meant by public good? Public good is a product that an individual can consume with reducing its availability to others and of which no one is deprived. For example, public good include law enforcement, national defense, civil system, public parks, and the air we breathe. Question number 72. Consider the following with respect to function of capital market. Capital markets bring together those requiring capital and those having excess capital. Capital markets aim to achieve better efficiency in transaction. It helps in economic growth. It ensures there is the continuous availability of funds by ensuring the movement and the productive utilization of capital. It helps in boosting the national income, minimizing transaction cost and information cost, makes trading of securities easier for companies and investors. It offers insurance against market risk. Question number 73. Consider the following with respect to hedging. Hedging is a financial technique that helps to reduce or mitigate the effects of measurable type of risk from the future changes in the fair value of commodities, cash flow, securities, currencies, assets, and liabilities. It is a kind of an insurance that do not eliminate the risk completely but mitigate its effect. It consists of a purchase or sale of equal quantities of the same or very similar commodities approximately simultaneously in two different markets, with the exception that a future change in price in one market will be offset by an opposite change in the other market. Question number 74. Consider the following with respect to fiscal policy and economic growth. Fiscal policy is used to increase the productive capacity of the economy. Tax is to be used as an instrument for encouraging investment. Tax holidays and tax rebates for new industries stimulate investment. Public sector investments are to be increased to fill the gap left by private investment. When resource mobilization through tax measures is inadequate, the government resorts to borrowing both from internal and external sources to finance growth and projects. Question number 75. Consider the following with respect to fiscal neutrality. Fiscal neutrality is when a government taxing, spending, or borrowing decision has or is intended to have no net effect on the economy. Policy change can be considered neutral in either their macroeconomic or microeconomic impact or both. Fiscal neutrality may also refer strictly to the budgetary impact of a certain policy change. Question number 76. Consider the following with respect to primary deficit. Gross primary deficit is gross fiscal deficit less interest payments. Net primary deficit is the net fiscal deficit minus net interest payment. Net interest payment is interest paid minus interest receipt. Question number 77. Which of the following are considered as the demerits of the balanced budget? It does not offer any solution to the problem of unemployment during depression. It is not helpful to the growth and development programs of the programs of the less developed countries. Question number 78. Consider the following statement with respect to repo rate. Repo rate, the interest rate at which the Reserve Bank provides overnight liquidity to banks against the collateral of government and other approved securities under the liquidity adjustment facility. If the RBI wants to make it more expensive for the banks to borrow money, it increases the repo rate. Similarly, if RBI wants to make it cheaper for banks to borrow money, it reduces the repo rate. Repo rate stood at 5.75%. Question number 17. Consider the following statement regarding reserve money. Reserve money is also called central bank money, monetary base money, or high powered money. It is the base level for the money supply or the high powered component of the money supply. In the most simple language, reserve money is currency in circulation plus deposits of commercial bank with RBI. Question number 80. Consider the following statement regarding quantity theory of money. Quantity theory of money states that money supply and the price level in an economy are in direct proportion to one another. When there is a change in the supply of money, there is a proportional change in the price level and vice versa. It is supported and calculated by using the Fisher equation on quantity theory of money. Money supply into velocity of money is equal to price level into volume of the transaction. Question number 81. Consider the following with respect to pump priming. Pump priming refers to the step taken to stimulate spending in an economy during or after a recession. Generally, it involves pumping small amount of government fund into a depressed economy to encourage growth. Question number 82. Consider the following with respect to progressive tax. Progressive tax based on the taxpayer's ability to pay. It imposes a lower tax rate on low income earners than on those with a higher income. This is usually achieved by creating tax brackets that group taxpayers by income range. The income tax system in the US is considered a progressive system, although it has been growing flatter in recent decades. Question number 83. Arrange the following based on the increasing order of liquidity. Cash is the highest liquid asset, followed by banking accounts, checkable account, short-term promissory notes, treasury bills, and other government bonds. Question number 84. Consider the following with respect to fiscal policy and national income. It's the strength of the fiscal policy to bring out the desired result in the economy. When the government want to increase the income of the country, then it increases the direct and indirect tax rates in the country. There is some other measures like reduction in tax rates so that the more people get motivated with deposit actual tax. When the government of the concerned country spends money on the projects like railway, school, dams, electricity, roads, etc., to increase the welfare of the citizen, it improves the infrastructure of the country. And improved infrastructure in the key is further speed up of the economic growth of the country when the central government of the country gives incentives like exemption in custom duty, concession in the excise duty while producing things in the domestic market. It motivates the foreign investors to increase the investment in the domestic country. Question number 85. Consider the following with respect to effective revenue deficit. Effective revenue deficit is a new term introduced in the Union Budget 2011 and 12. While revenue deficit is the difference between revenue received and the revenue expenditure, the present accounting system includes all grants and the union government of the state to the state government or UTs or other bodies as revenue expenditure, even if they are used to create assets. Such assets created by the subnational governments bodies are owned by them and not by the union government. Nevertheless, they do result in the creation of durable assets. According to the finance ministry. Such revenue expenditure contribute to the growth in the economy and therefore should not be treated as unproductive in nature. The union budget 11-12 is methodology has been introduced to capture the effective revenue deficit, which includes those the revenue expenditure in the form of grants for creation of capital assets. If this methodology is taken into account, the effective revenue deficit for 2010-11 is only 2.3% as against the revenue deficit of 3.4% of GDP. The effective revenue deficit for 2011-12 is projected at 1.8% as against the revenue deficit estimated of 3.4%. Question number 86. Consider the following with respect to amended FRBM in 2013. In budget 2012-13, the Finance Act changed the FRBM Act and it brought a new commitment of eliminating the effective revenue deficit. The amendment rules extended the time for elimination of effective revenue deficit by March 2015 and bringing down fiscal deficit to 3% by March 2017. The revenue and fiscal deficit may exceed the target specified in rules only on grounds of national security or national calamity or such other exceptional grounds as the central government may specify. Question number 87. Consider the following with respect to gender budgeting. Gender budgeting. Gender budget was also introduced along with the outcome budget in India in 2005-6. Gender budgeting is an exercise to translate the stated gender commitments of the government into budgetary commitments involving special activities for empowering women and examination of the utilization of resources allocated for women and the impact of public expenditure and policies of the government on women. The 2019-20 budget aims to design a roadmap for women empowerment and their increased participation in the Indian economy through gender budgeting. Question number 88. Which of the following condition may necessitate the RBI to keep the policy rate at a lower level? The RBI keeps the repo rate high or increases it with the inflation in the economy increases. When inflation expectation of the people is high, that is they are expecting that in future inflation will increase, and then such a behavior of the people ultimately lead to higher inflation in the economy, due to which RBI increases the repo rate. Question number 89. Consider the following statement with respect to RBI role as banker to the state government. The state government as the state governments are required to maintain a minimum balance with the Reserve Bank, which varies from state to state depending on the relative size of the state budget and economic activity, to tide over temporary mismatch in the cash flow of receipts and payment. The Reserve Bank provides ways and means advances overdraft to the state government. The WMA scheme for the state government has provision for special drawing facility and normal WMA. The WMA means ways and means advancement overdraft. SDF means special drawing facility. Question number 90. Tax subsumed under GSTR. Taxes going to subsumed under GSTs at the central level. The following taxes are being subsumed. First one, central excise duty, additional excise duty, service tax, additional custom duty, commonly known as countervailing duty, special additional duty of customs. At the state level, the following taxes are being subsumed. Subsuming of state value added tax, bus sale tax, entertainment tax other than tax levied on the local bodies, central sale tax levied by the central and collected by the states, octroi and entry tax, purchase tax, luxury tax, tax on lottery, betting and gambling. Question number 91. Consider the following with respect to liquidity. Liquidity means how quickly you can get your hands on your cash. In simpler terms, liquidity is to get your money whenever you need it. Question number 92. Consider the following statement with respect to open market operation. It is an common misconception that open market operation change the total stock of government securities, but in reality they only change the proportion of government securities held by the RBI commercial and cooperative banks. Question number 93. Consider the following regarding capital adequacy ratio. The base 3 norms stipulated a capital to risk weight assets of 8%. However, as per RBI norms, Indian scheduled commercial banks are required to maintain a CAR of 9%, while Indian public sector banks are emphasized to maintain a CAR of 12%. Question number 94. Consider the following with respect to liberalization. The ideology was the product of the breakdown of feudalism and the growth of market or capitalist society in its place, which have become popular in economics via the writing of Adam Smith and got identified as a principle of laissez-faire. Pro market or pro capitalistic inclusion in the economic policies of an economy is the process of liberalization. The most suitable example of this process could be China of the mid 1980s, when it announced its open door policy. The process of decreasing trades of a state economy and increasing trades of the market economy is liberalization. In the India case, the term liberalization is used to show the direction of the economic reforms with decreasing the influence of the state and or the planned or the command economy and increasing influence of free market or the capitalistic economy. It is moved towards capitalism. India is attempting to strike its own balance of the state market mix. It means even if the economic reforms has the direction towards market economy, it can never be branded a blind run to capitalism. Question number 95. RBI maintains reserve in the form of capital to cover various risks. The risks are: RBI maintains reserve in the form of capital to cover various risks, including market risk, operational risk, credit risk, contingency risk. Question number 96. Consider the following with respect to regulation of NBFCs. The different categories of NBFCs are regulated by different regulators. Most NBFCs are regulated by RBI, however, not all. Venture capital fund, merchant banking companies, stock broking companies are registered with SEBI. The insurance companies are regulated by IRDA. Chit fund companies are regulated by the respective state government. Nidhi companies are regulated by Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. Question number 97. Consider the following statement regarding scheduled commercial banks. Bank that is formed with primary aim to earn profit from the banking business. They account for a major proportion of the business of the scheduled bank in India, categorized into the five groups based on their ownership and their nature of operation. Consider the following statement regarding consumer price index. Consumer price index, retail inflation. It is an index measuring retail inflation in the economy by collecting the change in price of the most common goods and service used by consumers. It is released by static Central Statistics Office and under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Question number 99. Consider the following statement with respect to Monetary Policy Committee. The MPC is required to meet at least 4 times a year. The quorum for the meeting of the MPC is 4 members. Each member of the MPC has 1 vote, and in the event of an equality of votes, the governor has a second or a casting vote. Question number 100. In India, inflation is primarily measured by two main indices: They are WPI, Wholesale Price Index, and CPI, Consumer Price Index, which measures wholesale and retail level price changes respectively. The CPI calculates the difference in the price of commodities and services such as food, medical care, education, electronics, etc., which Indian consumers buy for use.